Rain beat against the century-old windows of Columbia University as Emily Carter crossed the campus with her used books pressed tightly against her chest. Her worn sneakers contrasted cruelly with the designer shoes that passed by her without even noticing her. At 21 years old, Emily carried more than just her patched backpack. She carried the weight of being the only full scholarship student among heirs to fortunes, the girl from Texas who dared to dream of the Ivy League. "Look at the poor thing," whispered Madison Whitmore, leader of the Delta Kappa sorority, as Emily passed through the main hallway. "I bet those clothes came from the church thrift store." The laughter echoed like shattering glass. Emily quickened her pace, swallowing the tears that threatened to fall. It wasn't the first time. It wouldn't be the last. Welcome to college romance. We reveal gripping stories of broken trust, student secrets, and family, with shocking twists and turns. If you're looking for powerful narratives and intense emotions, this is the place for you. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing. But Emily had a secret no one knew. She wasn't there by accident. Every humiliation, every look of disdain only fed the flame inside her, the flame that would one day transform her into the writer she'd always dreamed of being. "Miss Carter," the deep voice made her stop. Emily turned slowly. Dr. Alexander Hayes was standing in his classroom doorway, his intense blue eyes fixed on her. "Yes, Professor, your analysis of Virginia Woolf in the last class was exceptional." He crossed his arms, leaning against the doorframe with natural elegance. "You saw beyond the obvious. That's rare." Emily felt her face burn. At 35, Dr. Hayes was a legend at Columbia. Charming, mysterious, with a PhD in comparative literature from Oxford and an impeccable reputation. They said he'd turned down offers from Yale and Harvard to teach there. "Thank you, Professor," Emily murmured, feeling the venomous stares of Madison and her friends piercing her back. "Don't thank me. Just keep doing what you do." He smiled slightly, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, as if hiding something. "Real talent can't be bought, no matter how much money your parents have." The phrase fell like a bomb in the silent hallway. Madison went pale with rage as Alexander Hayes returned to his classroom, leaving Emily paralyzed in the corridor, her heart beating erratically. Something had changed in that moment. Something Emily didn't yet understand, but that was already beginning to transform her life in impossible ways to imagine. The advanced English literature classroom was in complete silence when Emily raised her hand. "Miss Carter," Dr. Hayes arched an eyebrow. Clearly surprised, Emily took a deep breath. She had spent the entire night preparing that question, knowing it could seem presumptuous. "Professor, everyone always interprets Mrs. Dalloway as a critique of post-war English society, but what if Virginia Woolf was really writing about herself, about the prison of being who the world expects you to be, even when it destroys you inside?" The silence in the room became even denser. Madison rolled her eyes. "Wow! How deep!" she whispered sarcastically to the friend beside her. But Dr. Hayes had approached Emily's desk, his eyes shining with something that looked like recognition. "Continue," he said softly. Emily felt all heads turn to her. Her heart was pounding, but something in Alexander Hayes's expression encouraged her. "Clarissa Dalloway spends the entire day preparing a party to please others, while inside she's drowning in memories and regrets. She chose safety over passion. She chose to be who she should be, not who she really was." Emily paused, her words gaining strength, and that killed her inside, just as it killed Wolf herself in the end. The silence was absolute. Now, Dr. Hayes clapped slowly, a genuine smile lighting up his normally serious face. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. He looked at the rest of the class. This is real literary analysis, not memorizing theories from dead critics, but connecting viscerally with the text. Madison was red with anger. It's just an opinion, she muttered. An opinion? Alexander Hayes turned to her with icy eyes. Miss Whitmore, have you presented a single original idea this semester, or do you just regurgitate what you read on the internet? The tension in the room was palpable. After class, Emily was putting away her books when she felt a presence beside her. Miss Carter. The professor's voice was low, almost intimate. You have a real gift. Don't let anyone extinguish that in you. Emily looked up and lost herself in that intense blue gaze. Why are you being kind to me? The words came out before she could stop them. Alexander Hayes seemed genuinely surprised by the question. For a moment, something vulnerable flashed across his face. Because I recognize someone who is fighting to be who they really are in a world that wants to turn them into someone else. His voice was low, almost confessional, and because that deserves to be defended. He lightly touched her shoulder before walking away, leaving Emily with her skin tingling where his fingers had been. On the other side of the door, Madison watched everything with narrow eyes and a cruel smile on her lips. The rumors would start that very night. Did you hear? The scholarship girl is hitting on Dr. Hayes. She's so obvious pathetic. I bet she thinks she's going to change her grades that way. Emily closed her eyes, breathing deeply as the voices whispered through the cafeteria. 3 weeks since that class, and the rumors had spread like wildfire. The worst part was that there was a grain of truth in them. She couldn't stop thinking about Dr. Hayes, about the way he looked at her during classes, as if he could see through all her defenses, about the casual encounters in the library, where they talked about literature for hours until the librarian asked them to leave. Emily Carter. She looked up and her heart sank. The ethics professor was standing beside her table. The dean would like to speak with you. Dean Edward Blackwood's office was as intimidating as a cathedral, all dark wood and framed diplomas. The man behind the desk had impeccable gray hair and eyes cold as steel. Miss Carter. His voice was cutting. Certain, concerning rumors have come to my attention. Emily felt her world beginning to crumble. Rumors, he continued, ignoring her interruption, about an inappropriate relationship between you and one of our most respected professors. There's nothing inappropriate. The words exploded from her. We just talk about literature. He's helping me develop my writing. The dean studied her with penetrating eyes. Miss Carter, you're a scholarship student. Your continued presence here depends not only on your grades, but on your conduct. He made a significant pause. It would be a shame to lose your scholarship over poor choices. It was a clear threat. Emily left the office trembling, tears of anger and frustration streaming down her face. She was in the women's bathroom, trying to compose herself, when the door opened. Madison Whitmore entered with her followers, all wearing predatory smiles. So, Emily, Madison leaned against the sink beside her. How was the meeting with the dean? Emily turned to leave, but one of the girls blocked the door. I was the one who told him, you know? Madison examined her perfectly manicured nails. About your little secret sessions with Dr. Hayes. Someone needs to protect the professors from ambitious girls. Ambitious Emily turned. Rage finally overcoming fear. You mean poor? Just say it, Madison. That's what bothers you, that a poor girl from Texas is smarter than you, even with all your money. The slap came fast, making Emily's head snap to the side. Watch who you provoke, scholarship girl. Madison moved closer, her voice venomous. I can get you expelled with one phone call. My father is one of the biggest donors to this university. Emily touched her burning face, but kept her eyes fixed on Madison. Do whatever you want. At least I got here on merit. She pushed past the girls and left, leaving Madison furious behind her. That night, Emily was sitting alone in the library after closing hours. She had a special key, a privilege of being the librarian's assistant. I thought I'd find you here. Emily jumped in her chair. Alexander Hayes was standing between the shelves, shadows dancing across his face. Professor, you shouldn't be here. If anyone sees, I know about the meeting with the dean. He moved closer, slowly, and about Madison Whitmore. How did you? Because I was also summoned today. He pulled up a chair and sat beside her, so close Emily could feel the warmth of his body. He warned me to keep my distance from you. So that's it, Emily whispered, feeling her heart break. It's over before it even began. Emily. The way he said her name, without the formal Miss Carter, made something melt inside her. Look at me. She looked up and lost herself in the blue sea of his gaze. I don't care what they say. Don't care about rumors or reputations. His hand found hers on the table. For the first time in years, I feel ... alive. Real. And it's because of you, Alexander ... It was the first time she'd said his name. I know this is crazy. I know all the risks, but Emily ... He squeezed her hand. I can't stay away from you. Emily knew she should pull back, knew this could destroy everything she'd fought for. But when Alexander leaned in and his lips finally met hers, all the sensible reasons disappeared. The kiss was gentle, almost reverent, as if he were afraid of breaking her. When they separated, both were trembling. We're going to have to be careful, Alexander whispered against her lips. I know. Very careful. I know, she repeated, pulling him back for another kiss. But neither of them saw the shadow moving between the shelves, the figure that took a picture with their phone before disappearing silently into the night. The trap was being set, and neither of them had any idea how deep Alexander Hayes' secret really went. The next months were the most intense of Emily's life. Days of normal classes and discreet glances across the room. Nights of secret meetings in cafes off campus. Conversations that lasted until dawn about literature, life, dreams, and fears. Alexander Hayes was different when alone with her. The masks fell, revealing a man more complex and tormented than Emily had ever imagined. I've never allowed myself this before, he confessed one night as they walked down a dimly lit Brooklyn street. Real connection. Vulnerability. I've always been ... careful. Controlled. Why? Emily intertwined her fingers with his. Alexander was silent for a long moment. Because when you come from where I came from, you learn early that people use your weaknesses against you. His eyes became distant. You learn to wear masks, to never show who you really are. And who are you really? Emily stopped, forcing him to look at her. He touched her face tenderly. I'm still discovering. But with you, I feel closer to finding out than I ever have. Emily didn't know then how loaded with meaning those words were, how much truth Alexander was still hiding. The first crack came on a rainy Tuesday. Emily was in her small studio when someone knocked violently on the door. She opened it to find Madison Whitmore with a manila envelope in her hand and a triumphant smile on her face. "Hi, Emily, can I come in?" "No," Madison laughed. "That's okay, this won't take long." She opened the envelope and took out a series of photographs. "Recognize this." Emily's blood froze. They were photos of her and Alexander in the library. Kissing, embracing, clearly intimate. "Where did you get these?" "Doesn't matter. What matters is what I'm going to do with them." Madison tilted her head. "Unless you do what I ask." Blackmail. Emily felt nausea rising. "You're going to blackmail me?" Blackmail is such an ugly word. Madison examined the photos with false innocence. "I prefer to think of it as a negotiation. You give up Dr. Hayes, transfer to another university, and these photos never see the light of day. And if I refuse, then these photos reach the dean tomorrow morning. Dr. Hayes loses his job, you lose your scholarship, and both of you will be ruined." Madison smiled sweetly. "Your choice." She left the photos in the hallway and walked away, the sound of her heels echoing like a death sentence. Emily closed the door and slid to the floor, trembling. She had 24 hours to decide her and Alexander's future. That night, she told him everything. They were in Alexander's apartment, an elegant but curiously impersonal loft, as if he didn't really live there. Madison Whitmore. Alexander repeated the name as if it were poison. His jaw was tense, his knuckles white. Of course it would be her. "Alexander, she's not bluffing. If those photos reach the dean, I know." He stood abruptly, running his hands through his hair. "I know, Emily. So what do we do?" Tears began streaming down her face. "I can't let you lose everything because of me." "Because of you." Alexander turned, incredulity in his voice. "Emily, you're the only real thing that's happened in my life in years. But your career? To hell with my career." He was beside her now, holding her face between his hands. "Do you really think I care about that more than I care about you? You should." Emily was openly crying now. "You worked so hard, sacrificed so much to pretend." His voice was rough with emotion. "To live a lie." Emily blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" Alexander released her and stepped away, his posture rigid. "Emily, there's something I need to tell you, something I should have told you a long time ago." The tone of his voice made Emily's heart race with apprehension. "What?" He took a deep breath, as if preparing to jump off a cliff. "My name isn't really Alexander Hayes. I mean, it is. Legally, I changed it to that 10 years ago, but ... He turned to her. "My birth name is Alexander Blackwood." It took a moment for the name to register. "Blackwood, like the dean?" You're his son, Alexander, or whoever he really was, let out a bitter laugh. Edward Blackwood is my father. Emily felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. This doesn't make sense. Why would you be teaching at your father's university under a false name? Because he asked me to. Alexander sat down, looking suddenly exhausted. 5 years ago, my father made me a proposition. He wanted me to infiltrate the university as an ordinary professor, to observe the students, especially the elite ones, and document everything. Document what? The rot, elitism, the way money and privilege corrupt everything. His eyes met hers. My father may seem like a cold administrator, but he hated Columbia's transformation into a playground for the rich. He wanted proof. He wanted me to write a book exposing it all. Emily sat down slowly, trying to process everything. So, you're rich. My family is one of the richest on the East Coast. He laughed without humor. Ironically, I grew up exactly like Madison and her friends. Privileged. Spoiled. It was only when I went to Oxford that I realized how empty it all was. I came back and told my father I wanted to do something that mattered, and he suggested this social experiment. He saw an opportunity. I saw a chance for redemption. Alexander looked at her intensely. But then you walked into my class, Emily, and everything changed. How? Because you were real. Genuine. Everything I was pretending to be, you actually were. He moved closer to her. You reminded me why I started all this. Made me want to be the man you thought I was. Emily was crying again, but didn't know if it was from relief, anger, or confusion. Why didn't you tell me before? Because I was afraid. His voice broke. Afraid you'd see me as just another rich liar. Afraid of losing you. And now? What do we do now? Alexander took her hands. Now we stop hiding. Madison wants to destroy us. Let her try. His eyes gleamed with determination. It's time for this whole university to know the truth. About us. About everything. Alexander, you're talking about ending my father's experiment. Yes, revealing who I really am, and publicly acknowledging that I love you. The words hung in the air between them. It was the first time he'd said it. You love me. Emily whispered, desperately, completely, stupidly. He smiled sadly. Even if it destroys everything. Emily pulled him into a kiss that was part desperation, part promise. Then, let's do it together, she said against his lips. Together. Neither of them knew that in 3 days, the annual university ball would become the stage for the biggest twist Columbia had ever seen. Columbia University's grand ballroom was transformed into an expensive fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over designer dresses and impeccable tuxedos. New York's elite was all present donors, millionaire alumni, and, of course, the university's most privileged students. Emily Carter was hiding behind a column, watching everything from afar. She shouldn't be there. The ball cost $500 per ticket, but Alexander had insisted. He had bought her dress, a simple but elegant black dress, and promised that this night would change everything. She still didn't know how much. Nervous. Alexander's voice made her heart jump. He was devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo, looking like he completely belonged in that world of luxury and privilege. Because he did. She was still getting used to that reality. Terrified, Emily admitted. Alexander, are you sure about this? After you go up on that stage, there's no going back. I know. He took her hand. But continuing to live a lie? That would be much worse. Dean Edward Blackwood stepped onto the stage, the microphone amplifying his authoritative voice. Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to see you here for our annual ball. He paused, his eyes sweeping the crowd. Tonight we celebrate not only Columbia's tradition, but also its bright future. That's when Emily saw Madison Whitmore approaching the stage. Her heart sank. Alexander Madison but Madison had already taken the microphone from a student committee member. Sorry to interrupt. Dean Blackwood, her voice was sweet as poisoned honey, but I think there's something everyone here needs to know. A murmur went through the crowd. Miss Whitmore, the dean began, clearly irritated. This is not the time. Oh, I think it's exactly the time. Madison smiled and waved to someone in the crowd. One of her friends began projecting images on a screen. Look at this. Our dear and respected Dr. Alexander Hayes has a little secret. The photos appeared on the giant screen. Emily and Alexander in the library. Kissing. Embracing. Collective gasps echoed through the hall. Emily felt her world crumbling. She was being destroyed publicly, humiliated in front of hundreds of people. Not only is Dr. Hayes having an inappropriate affair with a student, Madison continued, her voice full of false concern, but this student is the scholarship recipient, Emily Carter. How convenient. Right? Who knows what kind of special favor she's been receiving in his classes? The crowd exploded in indignant whispers. Emily started to back away, tears of humiliation burning her eyes, but Alexander held her arm. Wait, he whispered. Trust me. Before she could respond, Alexander was walking toward the stage. The crowd parted for him like the Red Sea. Thank you, Miss Whit, for that demonstration. Alexander's voice was calm, almost amused as he took the microphone. You saved me the work. Madison blinked, confused. This wasn't the script. Alexander turned to the crowd, his posture relaxed but commanding. Yes, the photos are real. Emily Carter and I are together. He paused, letting the information sink in. But there are some things you don't know. For example, ... He turned to the dean, who was pale on stage. Dad, I think it's time to end our little experiment. Don't you think? The silence in the hall was absolute. Dad, Madison repeated, her voice shrill with shock. Alexander, the dean began, his voice tense. This isn't the time for no, Dad. It's exactly the time. Alexander looked at the stunned crowd. My name is Alexander Blackwood. I'm Dean Blackwood's son and heir to the Blackwood family fortune. 5 years ago, I changed my name and assumed a false identity to teach here. The crowd's murmur grew into a roar. Why do that? Someone shouted, because my father and I wanted to document something. We wanted to expose the way privilege and money have corrupted this institution. Alexander gestured to Madison. We wanted to prove how rich students like Miss Whitmore use their connections to intimidate and destroy anyone who threatens their position. And you just saw it live. Madison was red with anger and shame. You were using us, spying on us, observing, documenting systematic bullying, favoritism of wealthy donors, professors who changed grades for donations, everything. He looked directly at her. And you, Madison, were one of the worst. The messages you sent to Emily, the threats, even hiring someone to take those photos, all documented. Madison went pale. Alexander continued, his voice filling with passion. But something I didn't expect was meeting Emily Carter. He extended his hand to her, who was paralyzed beside the stage. Come here! Emily hesitated, but then saw the love in his eyes. She walked to the stage, trembling, and took his hand. Emily showed me that this whole experiment wasn't just about exposing the rot, Alexander said, his eyes fixed on her. It was about finding something real amid the fake. She came here with nothing but talent and determination. She was humiliated, intimidated, and still never lost her integrity. She's everything this university should be, but isn't. He turned to the crowd. So yes, we fell in love. And yes, I broke rules by being with her. But I won't apologize for it, because Emily Carter is the most real, most genuine, most brilliant person I've ever met. And if that costs me my career, so be it. The dean was paralyzed on stage, visibly struggling between his roles as father and administrator. That's when something unexpected happened. An elderly woman in the first row began to clap. Slowly at first, then more forcefully. Bravo! She shouted. Finally, someone has the courage to tell the truth. Others began to join in. Not everyone. Many of the wealthy donors looked outraged, but enough to create a domino effect. A professor Emily recognized from the sociology department came on stage. Dr. Blackwood Hayes. As we knew he Miss Right, I've seen this for years. The way certain students receive special treatment, the way scholarship students are marginalized. He looked at the dean. If this doesn't change, I'm also going public. More professors joined him. Some students, to those who, like Emily, came from humble backgrounds and were tired of being invisible. Madison tried to slip off the stage, but Alexander stopped her. Not so fast, Miss Whitmore. You wanted exposure? I'll give you exposure. He looked at the dean. Dad, you know what needs to be done. Dean Blackwood seemed to age 10 years in that moment. But then he nodded slowly. Miss Whitmore, in light of the evidence presented against you, including blackmail, harassment, and violation of the Student Code of Conduct, you are expelled from Columbia University, effective immediately. Madison let out a scream of rage and disbelief before running out of the hall, tears of humiliation streaming down her perfectly made-up face. The dean then turned to Alexander and Emily. As for you two, ... He made a long pause. Dr. Blackwood will resign from his teaching position to avoid any appearance of impropriety, but Emily Carter will keep her full scholarship. In fact, he looked at the crowd. I will be creating a new scholarship program for students from humble backgrounds, in honor of students who, like Miss Carter, deserve to be here on merit, not bank account. Applause echoed through the hall, this time louder and more genuine. Alexander squeezed Emily's hand and leaned to whisper in her ear. Ready to face the real world now? Emily looked at him, tears in her eyes, but this time from happiness. With you, always. Their kiss on stage was photographed by dozens of cell phones and would be the headline in the university newspaper the next morning. But neither of them cared anymore. The truth was finally exposed. 6 months later, the small Brooklyn cafe was full of students and artists, the smell of fresh coffee mixing with the sound of animated conversations. Emily Carter was sitting at her favorite table by the window, her laptop open, fingers flying over the keyboard. Another cappuccino, Emily. The barista already knew her order by heart. "Please, Sarah." "Thank you." The cafe door opened and Alexander Blackwood entered, shaking the light rain from his coat. He smiled when he saw her, that smile that still made her heart race. "How's the book?" he asked, kissing the top of her head before sitting down. Chapter 15. The part where the protagonist finally confronts the system. Emily smiled, inspired by real events. Of course. Of course. Alexander took her hand across the table. "And how is New York's most promising writer?" Emily laughed. "I don't know if 3 interested publishers qualify me for that title." 3 major publishers, Alexander, because of 50 pages. Imagine when they finished reading the complete manuscript. Much had changed since that fateful night at the ball. Alexander had actually resigned from his teaching position, but not before submitting an explosive 400-page manuscript to a publisher. Privilege and Rot, a year infiltrated in America's university elite. The book would be released in 2 months and was already generating buzz in the national press. Dean Blackwood, to everyone's surprise, had embraced the change. The initial scandal had been brutal: furious donors, lawsuit threats, sensationalist headlines, but it had also awakened a necessary conversation about elitism in higher education. The scholarship program he'd promised was not only implemented, but had already tripled the number of low-income students at Columbia. Madison Whitmore and 3 of her friends had been expelled, and 5 others suspended. "I got an email today," Emily said, her eyes shining, "from Professor Martinez, from Comparative Literature, and he wants me to be his teaching assistant next semester. He said my unique perspective would be invaluable to students." Alexander smiled with genuine pride. "Y que new Italiano. You're brilliant, Emily. The world is finally seeing that. Because of you," she said softly. "No." He squeezed her hand. "Despite me. You always had it in you. I just was lucky enough to be there when you decided to stop hiding." The cafe door opened again and a young girl entered, visibly nervous. She recognized Emily and approached hesitantly. "Sorry to bother you, but are you Emily Carter?" Emily blinked, surprised. "I am, yes. I read about you in the university newspaper, about everything that happened." The girl wrung her hands. "I'm a freshman at Columbia. I'm also a scholarship student. And I just wanted to thank you for having courage, for not giving up." Emily felt tears prick her eyes. "What's your name?" Sophie Reyes. I'm from the Bronx." "Sit down, Sophie." Emily indicated the empty chair. "Tell me about yourself. What are you studying?" Alexander watched as Emily talked with the younger girl, seeing the confidence and hope being reborn in the freshman's eyes. He recognized that look. It was the same Emily had when he met her. Lost, but determined. Scared, but brilliant. and now Emily was paying it forward. When Sophie finally left, promising to meet Emily again, Alexander took both her hands across the table. "You're amazing. You know that. I learned from the best," Emily replied, her eyes full of love. Actually, Alexander took a deep breath. "There's something I've wanted to ask you for a while." He stood up and, to Emily's absolute shock, knelt beside the table. The entire cafe went silent. "Emily Carter, you appeared in my life when I was living the biggest lie of my existence, and you showed me what it means to be genuinely, vulnerably, and truly real." He took a small velvet box from his pocket. "You saved me from a life of masks and pretending. You showed me that courage isn't having all the answers. It's being willing to be yourself, no matter the cost." Emily was openly crying now, hands covering her mouth. "So I asked, will you continue being courageously real, ... with me, forever?" He opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant ring, with a single diamond that caught the light like a promise. "Yes." Emily could barely speak through the tears. "Yes, yes, yes, yes." Alexander slid the ring onto her finger as the entire cafe exploded in applause and whistles. He pulled her into a kiss that was part celebration, part promise, part gratitude for having found each other against all odds. When they separated, both were smiling through tears. "Ready for more scandal?" Alexander whispered. "Dean's son marries former student." "Let the headlines come," Emily replied, laughing. "We've been through worse, haven't we? My father's going to have a heart attack. Your father will be happy. He adores me." "True?" Alexander pulled her in for another kiss. He always had good taste. Columbia University's main auditorium was packed. Spring graduation always attracted crowds. But this year, there was something special in the air. Emily Carter, now Emily Carter Blackwood, was sitting among the graduates, her ceremonial gown impeccable, the wedding ring shining on her left hand. She was 3 months pregnant, though few knew yet. Her book, Invisible: Memoirs of a Scholarship Student in the Ivy League, had become a New York Times bestseller, selling over 500,000 copies. Contracts for film adaptation were already being negotiated, but more important than all that, she had graduated summa cum laude, class speaker. Alexander was in the audience beside his father, Dean Blackwood. The two had completely reconciled, united by their shared love for Emily and their commitment to transforming Columbia into a truly meritocratic institution. Alexander's book, Privilege Exposed, had won the National Book Award and triggered reforms at universities across the country. And now, the Master of Ceremonies announced, "Our class speaker of 2027, Emily Carter." Emily walked to the podium, her heart beating hard, but not from nervousness. From excitement, from purpose. She looked at the crowd of faces, students, professors, families. Among them, she saw Sophie Reyes, now a sophomore, smiling encouragingly. She saw 5 other former scholarship students she had mentored. She saw real change happening. "When I arrived at Columbia 4 years ago," Emily began, her voice clear and strong, "I felt invisible. A poor girl from Texas in a world of heirs and elite. I didn't think I belonged here." She paused, letting the words breathe. "But I was wrong. Not about feeling invisible. That was real. I was wrong about not belonging." Her eyes met Alexander's in the audience. "Because belonging has nothing to do with money or last name. It's about merit, hard work, the courage to be yourself in a world that constantly tries to make you someone else. Applause began, but she gently raised her hand. My journey here wasn't easy. I was bullied, humiliated, almost gave up more times than I can count. She smiled, but then something extraordinary happened. Someone saw who I really was, not my bank account, not my background, not my thrift store clothes. My potential, my mind, my heart. She looked directly at Alexander, who had tears in his eyes. That someone taught me that authenticity is the most courageous way to exist. That vulnerability is strength, not weakness, and that the best love stories are those that follow the rules, they read the ones that rewrite them. The auditorium was completely silent. So to my fellow graduates, especially those who, like me, came from places where dreams seem impossible, you belong here. Your value isn't determined by how much money your parents have or where you came from. It's determined by what you do with the opportunities you earn. She took a deep breath, and to everyone who helped us get here, teachers who believed in us, mentors who guided us, and yes, even those who challenged us and forced us to prove our worth, thank you. You made us stronger. Emily looked at her notes one last time before speaking the final words. 4 years ago, I was an invisible girl with impossible dreams. Today, I'm a published writer, a wife, soon to be a mother. And most importantly, I'm completely, imperfectly, authentically myself. She smiled. And if I can do that, anyone can. Thank you, Colombia. Thank you for finally seeing me. But, more important, thank you for teaching me to see myself. The auditorium exploded in a standing ovation that lasted 5 full minutes. Alexander was openly crying, pride radiating from every part of him. Dean Blackwood, normally so composed, was discreetly wiping his eyes. And there in the back, a woman in her early 50s, Emily's mother, who had traveled by bus from Texas to see her daughter graduate, was crying tears of pure joy. After the ceremony, Emily and Alexander walked hand in hand across campus. The same campus where it had all begun, where she had felt so lost, where he had lived a life. So, Alexander said, placing his hand gently on her still flat belly, how should we tell the world about the future Blackwood heir or heiress? Heir nothing, Emily corrected with a smile. Our child will grow up knowing the value of hard work. No privileges, no shortcuts. Our daughter, Alexander corrected back. I have a feeling, daughter or son, it doesn't matter. Emily stopped and looked at him, her eyes shining with love and purpose. What matters is that they grow up knowing that courage isn't never being afraid. It's being terrified in doing the right thing anyway. Like their mother, Alexander said softly, pulling her close. Like their father, Emily responded. They kissed under the cherry blossom trees, the same place where they had secretly met so many times, when everything seemed impossible. But nothing was impossible, not when you had the courage to be real. Not when you had the courage to love, and definitely not when you had the courage to rewrite the rules. And so ended the romance that began with whispers in the library and ended with a standing ovation. The story of the invisible girl who found her voice, of the masked professor who found his truth, and of a love that refused to hide, no matter the cost. Madison, Whitmore? She transferred to a private university in California, where ironically, she began working with charity organizations for low-income students. It seems being publicly exposed had a transformative effect. Dean Blackwood became one of the most respected advocates for educational reform, visiting universities across the country to promote merit-based programs. Sophie Reyes and dozens of other scholarship students flourished under Emily's mentorship, proving that sometimes all we need is someone to believe in us first. And Emily and Alexander, they wrote their books, built their family, and lived their lives the only way that mattered authentically. Because in the end, the greatest lesson wasn't about forbidden romance or shocking secrets. It was about having the courage to be who you really are in a world that constantly asks you to be someone else. It was about choosing love over fear. And it was about understanding that the best stories, the real ones, the ones that matter, never follow the expected script. They rewrite the rules completely. For more exciting videos, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share. If you're looking for powerful narratives and intense emotions, this is the place for you.